Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and call to order. Welcome to the CRI meeting number 4. Let's go ahead and go around and do quick introductions. My name is Lacey Quintero. I am a member of the CRI representing the impacted families.
My name is Marty Townsend. I'm a Oahu resident.
My name is Walter Chun. I'm the General Public CRI representative.
Aloha, I'm Melody Aduha, representing organizations, and the organization is the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii, member of CRI.
David Frankel, I'm here representing the Sierra Club.
Let's go to Mandy.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Mandy Fine, representing impacted families, calling from Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
And Alima.
Aloha, Ilima de Casa. I am representing impacted Oahu residents. Mahalo for this meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you. As you can all see today, none of the signatory agencies are here. But regardless, the CRI will go ahead and move on to the first order of business. The first agenda item, we would like to go ahead and take nominations for new leadership to elect the new chair, vice chair, and secretary. Would anyone like to nominate?
I'll go ahead and nominate Marty Townsend to be our new chair, given the resignation from the CRI of the previous chair.
I second it.
I third.
Fourth.
Aye.
Wait, we're not voting. We're still nominating. We need to nominate vice chair and secretary. Anyone interested in nominating themselves?
I nominate Lacey Quintero for vice chair.
I second Lacey Quintero for vice chair.
And I'd like to nominate Susan Gorman Chang for secretary.
I second Susan Gorman Chang for secretary.
Aye.
Okay, let's have a little discussion on, would anyone like to discuss?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote. Any opposition? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote for the new chair, Marty.
Yay. Vice chair, Lacey.
And vice chair, Lacey, and Susan for secretary.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Great, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. So let's move on to agenda item, the second item on the agenda, which is the official CRI website. Rosalie, if you could pull that up, thank you. So we recognize that there might be some confusion given some of the statements that have been put out over the last 2 days, which we will discuss further on in the agenda. But for now, we just wanted to give everyone the information they need to be able to follow the CRI. So this is a website that we as a volunteers, the Community Representation Initiative, put together. And here you can find all of our meeting minutes, all of our correspondence, links to all of the videos of meetings that we've had, and ways to contact us and to follow us on social media. So this is the place to really engage with the Red Hill CRI, not the website that the Navy put out, which directs you to the Public Information Officer for the Navy. Okay. Any other conversation or discussion about the website? Okay, good. This is just for everyone's information. The next thing I wanted to go over and make sure everyone is supportive of is a proposed year-long calendar for the CRI meetings. So we are looking at meeting every third Thursday of the month. If anyone, and it's subject to change. Obviously, we'll need to coordinate quite a few schedules, but the idea is to aim for somewhere around that third Thursday of the month. And you can find this year-long calendar also on the CRI website.
So, would it make sense to make a motion to adopt the calendar as a tentative schedule for us? So when the Navy or the EPA says they'd like to meet with us to talk about various things, they know when we're scheduled, they can come to that meeting. So I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have double seconds. Any opposition? Okay, all in favor? Great. This is our proposed year-long calendar for Community Representation Initiative meetings for 2024, subject to change as we get close to the dates. All right, we put on the agenda a space for people to discuss their expectations and their goals and focuses for the year, foci for the year. This is just an opportunity for CRI members to say something if they wanted to. Floor is open. Walter?
I guess the expectation for this year is to help the Navy figure out how we can help them rebuild their trust. And so it's trust, transparency, and truth. I'm not sure that we're in the best position to help them since they're not willing to do it themselves. But I think in this upcoming year, we can do the best we can to help them.
My expectations for the focus of the coming year, sadly, are the same as, I mean, I really hate to say that it hasn't changed because the progress I would have liked to have seen hasn't been made yet. And that is, I would like actual actions taken for the families on the water lines that are still drinking petroleum hydrocarbons. And by action, I have to specify, I don't mean inaction. That's what I would like.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to see all of the questions that have been posed to the Navy and to DLA as well as EPA. I believe the count now is somewhere between around 150 questions. And I would say perhaps a third has been answered. But even some of those answers that have been provided, as well as the answers that have been provided during our meetings, have not actually been provided. So in action, I mean, it's not detailed enough. They only tell us so much, but they don't tell us the exact picture. And that creates a problem. So I would argue that even though, as they claim, that they have been here for 3 meetings, have we really gotten the answers that have been asked? And I would argue that the answer is no. So therefore, I would say that effectively, whether we have had actual meetings with the Navy, DLA, and EPA, the answer would be they were insufficient meetings, and we should continue on with our demand to have monthly meetings until we can get the full picture, the full answer, to make sure that the people of Hawaii is safe from any further petroleum contamination, as well PFAS. PFAS is something that we've been looking into. It's pretty much new for many of us, and it's definitely an unknown, and we still know that there is at least 9,000 gallons of AFFF with PFAS still there in Red Hill. And we have no representation right now to tell us when it's going to be removed, how it's going to be removed, and where it will be stored. So these things we really need to have a full disclosure from the military in which they have failed to provide. So I would like to see moving forward more disclosure, more preparation for the community in case we need to get more prepared in case something should happen. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add, but I was hoping we could address Patty Choi's questions, which I saw flashed up there. I don't know if you want to address it, or I can.
Yeah, sure. Let's let Mandy and Ilima have a minute to make their comments, and then we can look at the chat for questions we can answer right away. Mandy, Ilima, do you guys have anything you want to say?
I'm going to defer to the community and their questions. I think that it's good to be able to answer those because that's why we're all here, to get some answers. So we'll start there. Mahalo.
Okay, so yeah, my goal and dreams and hopes for 2024 for the CRI is that we actually have a that the Navy is able to evolve in its mindset away from this attempt to control and control the narrative and not be super transparent, and flip their mindset to be to see that we are actually on the same side, because it's in all of our interests to have safe drinking water for everyone, for their active duty personnel and their dependents, as well as our the civilian residents. And so I'd like to see the Navy work together with the CRI towards that goal, in addition to removing the threat that is the Red Hill fuel tanks. Yeah, okay, seeing no other comments, going on to comments in the chat, seeing Patty Choi's first, and I don't know, maybe we should scroll through in case there's any others. So Patty's asking basically what's going on. Great question. So the story is, and you guys chime in case I forget some key aspect of this. So we left the meeting in December with the expectation that we would be meeting with the Navy today, or in January, the third week of January. And, we identified for them that this is a very tough week for us, given the opening legislative session and the Onipa March yesterday, celebrating or commemorating the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. But nonetheless, because it was convenient for the EPA and for the Navy, we decided we would meet this week. We got an email on Tuesday notifying us that they would not be joining us, not the Navy and not the EPA. And instead, there were several attempts to have private meetings, individual members from the Navy officials and EPA officials. And we decided to hold firm to our expectation that CRI meetings be public, because transparency is a key element in building trust. And if they want to have our trust, then they have to be transparent. The reason why we have new leadership, well, we thought, for one thing, it's a new year, and so we thought maybe this is a good practice to get into. But the reality is that Heilani, that this work is really, really hard, and Heilani needed to step down. And so she is working on finding a substitute for her seat, as is Al Medeiros, to fill his seat. And so our expectation is for the February meeting that we will be fully seated with all the representatives. But yeah, that's the basics. Did I miss anything? Anybody want to add?
Well, just to be clear, Haley was overwhelmed, as we all are, with the amount of emails that are generated, and it was just too much. It was too much. So.
Yeah. I hope that answers the question. And if not, put in more. And did you see any other questions in the chat? Okay. Oh, why no EPA representative? Well, okay. So my understanding of the other side's perspective, the Navy is saying that the enforcement order creating the CRI only requires them to meet twice a quarter. So, 2 months out of every 3. And they are right. We have been meeting every month. And in our defense, they did give us the expectation that we'd be meeting every month, because when we first got together with Bob Thompson in particular, but several representatives from the Navy and the Defense Logistics Agency, they said, oh, we will meet with you as often as needed to ensure that, we build trust and yada, 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 word salad. So and the point is that we left the December meeting on the expectation that at the January meeting, we would be getting an update on the premise plumbing. That's the status of the plumbing for those houses which have identified to still be experiencing jet fuel in the tap water. And we also were supposed to get an update on a remediation plan and the transition from the defueling, the gravity defueling, removal of liquid fuel, to the more destructive defueling and cleanup and closure steps, which are much more complicated and tricky. But unfortunately, they are going to, if they stay to schedule, they're going to start that work without having any CRI input or understanding of what's going on, which is undermines the whole value of having this entity. But we charge on. Then the EPA said that they were disinclined to meet with us without the Navy meeting with us. So here we are today with no one from the federal signatories joining this meeting.
To be clear, however, the EPA said they were not inclined to meet with us without the Navy. However, they were willing to meet with us without the Navy in private. So there's, I don't know.
Yeah, so this is part of the challenge, is that there was a lot of email correspondence with many of the CRI members one-on-one, especially our former chair, Hill CRI, seeking her input individually, and the pressure became too much. And we met as a group, and we have weekly internal meetings that are open to the public on Zoom, and the links are available on the website that I showed you. And we discussed the value of meeting individually or privately with federal signatories. And we also discussed the value of having these kind of public meetings. And we really did consider it, like, how can we, try to straddle both? And we ultimately came to the point that we don't have the level of trust yet that we need to be able to feel comfortable having one-on-one meetings with the signatories. If they want to give information to the CRI, they need to come to a CRI meeting. Anything to add, David? Anyone else?
Yes,
Okay.
Marty.
Yeah, go ahead.
To follow up on David's point, I'd also like to highlight, and just for the public's awareness, the EPA Region 9 Administrator did fly over, and Amy Miller is also in town. The ladies did fly over. Part of their travel arrangements was to meet with the CRI, and they also declined last minute. However, they did not decline to have their full day of meetings with the Navy tomorrow. So I think it's just a really missed opportunity, and certainly disheartening, especially after their investigation, that none of those officials showed up to be here for the community.
All right, so I think that basically covers where we're at. We'll probably talk about this more in the next agenda item, because we want to pull up some of the email correspondence that we have received. So some of the CRI members wanted to make a point of commenting on this. So Rosalie, if you could pull up the email from Robert Thompson. He is a Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Navy. Those of you who have been following the soap opera will remember he's the one that says his office is right across the hall from this Assistant Secretary Berger. So he was a guy who could pick up the phone and get our problem solved. And this is the email that he sent us. And you can see, well, I don't know, David, you were the one that wanted to have this agenda item. Would you like to, or shall I walk people through it?
You can walk people through it.
Go for it. This is yours.
So he wants to reevaluate the structure of the CRI. The CRI is a product of the administrative order and consent that is an enforcement order that the EPA issued and that the Navy signed on to. The Navy does not have the legal authority to restructure the CRI, but it would like to, because it is not, it is unable to control us. The Navy would like to be able to deliver its talking points to us, set the agenda without us being able to obtain the information we need. So the Navy has proposed a series of apparently private meetings with us to discuss before the February meeting. But at least some of us are not interested or willing to do that. They can make their pitch in February at our meeting itself to the public and let everyone know what changes they would like to see. And as with requests that we make to them, I'm sure we will take their issues under advisement and give it all the due weight that it deserves.
Any other commentary from, okay, go for it, Walter.
There's a comment in this email that says the December meeting didn't go well. And I think that's one of the things that I take offense to. There's 10 members of the CRI that were elected by the people, and we speak for the people individually. We're not a specific organized group. So there's 10 different people with 10 different personalities, and a lot of us have some limited patience, especially me, with the fact that we're not being able to get any true transparency or being able to build trust. So members of the public did get a little bit irritated and angry, and that happens. If they're going to continue to lie to us or not tell us truth, give us information, people will react publicly like they have in previous meetings before the CRI. I would think that the Navy and EPA will take that home as a lesson. We are not acting poorly. We're acting out of frustration because we're being treated the way we're being treated.
Mandy, Ilima, do you guys have any? I'm sorry, I can't see you right now because we're sharing screen. So voice your interest in saying something if you have some.
I would like to reference sports because I'm always referencing sports, but this is like changing the goalposts, changing the rules after we've already started the game. I think that a lot of people here are very frustrated about the situation. I can completely understand why individuals who are exposed to contaminated drinking water would be frustrated at the situation. And I myself have been pushing the Navy, the federal government, to do more, including flushing the pipes and moving families because there is military housing available. So there are a lot of solutions, but unfortunately, the military or the DoD hasn't been as forthcoming. And I believe that's the reason why frustrations kind of came to a boil. And I have so much aloha for everyone that was on that panel during that meeting, including my substitute. So mahalo, mahalo, mahalo to all of you and to the public. Aloha.
Mandy, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, that was from earlier. I will defer on this comment, but don't you worry, I have more later.
No doubt. I just want to add that, trying to regulate people's behavior, like claiming decorum, is a tactic that is used to control people. It is a way, it was used often in the past for trying to control women, right? Women aren't allowed to speak up because they get hysterical or whatever, right? It's this idea that they have an expectation of a certain kind of decorum. I didn't think that the conversation that happened in December crossed any lines. The federal representatives and Navy representatives were not being helpful, and people were frustrated, rightfully so. And then the meeting carried on. We moved on. And I don't know, I guess I'm disappointed to see that the Navy personnel are so sensitive that they can't handle a little heated conversation, given that we're talking about something so significant, so serious, and it is their fault. They made this problem. This is their responsibility. They are responsible for fixing it, and they're also responsible for whatever emotions come up as a result of their behavior. And I think the Navy needs to take a step back and reflect on their own behavior and about what it was that they did that led to people feeling like they, needed to raise their voices. So, I think that's all I'm going to say about that. And are there any? Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on the improving, their suggestion to improve the operation of the CRI. Who do they want to improve it for? Because I think given what we have, we're doing a pretty good job for the public, and they're welcome to come to us every week and tell us how we can do better. But I think what they really mean is improve our operation to make them look better. And that's just not our job. And that's not why we're here.
I echo that. I was very disappointed. I think it further it dug the hole deeper for the Navy in terms of building public trust when they went on a public relations campaign over the last 2 days, trying to distract and staging interviews complete with bloopers that tried to fill the role of public education, but lacked the actual back and forth that the CRI setting provides to really be able to drill down below the skin level of whatever it is they are presenting. And I should say that the CRI was the single demand that got the most public comments on the proposed enforcement action that the EPA imposed on the Navy. Like, that was the one thing that the public wanted. It's the one thing that's different from the enforcement action on the 2014 leak, which we see, that enforcement action did nothing to protect public health. We don't even have, some of the basic reports that we still are supposed to be getting from that, right? The groundwater monitoring plans and things like that of that nature. So I think the CRI has an important role to play, and the fact that we have decided to make it public is something that the Navy and the federal signatories need to respect and learn to work with.
So just some context for those of you in the audience. Prior to the first official CRI meeting at the state capitol, we had several, I think, Zoom calls with the EPA and the Navy where they attempted to require that the CRI meetings be private. And they attempted to dictate basically the bylaws and procedures in which the CRI would operate, even though the areas that were on consent.
You broke it, David.
The administrative order on consent gave the CRI that authority. So,
okay, thank you. All right, looking around for any other. Yeah, Molly, sorry.
I just want to say that it's really disheartening because, okay. Thank you. I think it's a little disheartening now because we are supposedly the community liaisons between the Navy, DLA, and EPA. So all of these communications that they are doing without us, and I mean public communications, they recently had a press conference and recently had press releases, and they are not inviting us. And we are actually the ones that are elected to know this kind of communication so we can share it with all of you. But it appears now that they are going on their own and disregarding our authority under the 2023 consent order. So that really takes a big, bite out of our authority or our usefulness, I suppose, what we were elected for, if they're going to go around our authority and seek out their own members who they believe will be more favorable to what they want to portray in the community.
Okay, all right. At this point, I'd like to introduce Tara. So she's the substitute for Susan Gorman Chang, who couldn't be here tonight. And she, I don't know, you want to take a moment? We all want to introduce ourselves.
Hello, my name is Tara Sutton. As Marty stated, I am here tonight as a substitute for Susan Gorman Chang. I also ran for a position on this very loved, very loved group of people. I did not earn a seat for a permanent position, but I am very humbled to be asked to water line still. I moved to the water line in August of 2019, and we're still there. But also I live in the community as a student. I attend the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I also conduct research, and I'll discuss that later tonight because I look at the impacts of the Red Hill water contamination, and some findings were released today. But Susan asked that as I represent her tonight, that I speak on her behalf, and she prepared something for me to say. So if that is okay, I would like to read that. I'm not playing on my phone, promise. Aloha EPA, I greatly appreciate your investigation into the total petroleum hydrocarbons, TPH, in the water of families living in military housing. No amount of any type of TPH in the household water is safe. From my perspective, and should not be no amount of any type of TPH in household water is safe from my perspective, and should not be normalized in any way. I appreciate the efforts you have made to answer some of the questions listed in our CRI question spreadsheet. As individuals, we are thankful that you are here. As an agency, from my perspective, you seem to me to have been unduly influenced by the Navy with your refusal to meet with the CRI today. I am saddened that our trust in you, after being so strong when you came out with your report on total petroleum hydrocarbons being present in the water, is waning. I want the community representation initiative to work, and I hope it can be used again when a similar issue comes up within another community, as I know it will. We are learning as we go, and I think the EPA has a unique responsibility to keep us all together and communicating with one another, rather than appearing to side with the Navy and their refusal to meet with the CRI in public. I would ask for you, Amy Miller, to publicly facilitate an exchange of expectations between the CRI, EPA, and Navy. This is important because the EPA is the governing agency that legally created the CRI and is in charge with its correct execution. The Navy should not be the one initiating such a meeting. Mahalo. Aloha Navy personnel. The Community Representation Initiative, to me, is a serious, time-sensitive, and honorable obligation to our community here on Oahu. I have volunteered to be tasked with keeping all of the community's questions on an Excel spreadsheet, and currently our questions number 182. 42 have been answered to our satisfaction, while 46 answers are not considered adequate by the CRI. This is a disappointment to me, and I think the entire CRI. We have insisted that questions and answered be in writing because more often than not, communication between the CRI and the Navy has been problematic. Speaking for myself only, this stems in part, I think, that while we reside on the same island of Oahu, we live in two different cultures. The Navy culture is foreign to me. For example, both the CRI and the Navy use the word transparency, yet I think we have different meanings for the same word. A Navy culture, from my perspective, that appears steeped in rigid restraints, secrecy, and protocols, seem in contradiction with transparency as I would define it. When I hear Navy personnel stating they promise to be transparent, yet their actions are the opposite, my trust is eroded substantially. Aloha community members. It continues to be an honor for me to serve you as a member of the CRI, as we are committed to transparency. We created a website to house much of this information. Please help us through our social networks and contacts to share our link tree to all of this information. Thank you. I was like, I can't show that. It's in my speech. Everyone is invited to any and all meetings. Zoom links as well as day and times of meetings are included on the link tree. We encourage folks to attend, ask questions, and learn more about what is going on with Red Hill and your CRI. Mahalo.
Thank you. All right, I think we have discussed that agenda item thoroughly. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next one, which is concerns that we have about one of the representatives from the Navy to the CRI. Mandy, are you ready to? Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I got put in this position because I'm the last, I think, to officially communicate with Carnegie. Ohin Sinian, I think that's how you say his name. This has been a topic of conversation, a point of contention ever since our last CRI meeting. For context, you know, Carnegie and I had a conversation going back and forth where he lacked empathy or respect for the fact that our community members are still being harmed. And I was pretty much shut down. The Navy was not going to respond or address the harm that was still being caused to our people. As a result, first and foremost, that conversation obviously ended up on Hawaii News Now. And then before I could wake up the next morning, as a reminder, I'm 5 hours ahead of you all, so you had time to work through the evening. Our neighborhood Facebook pages were flooded with the Navy Times report, the Washington Post report, and who else? Oh, the CBS News report that actually has a video of the incident that I'm about to describe. We, the CRI members, were not aware until the community brought this to our attention. And so we acted fast and heard your concerns, and I'll go into that. A couple of things I want to read here just so I don't get it wrong. Several years ago, Carnegie was charged with 3 misdemeanor counts of brandishing a firearm after drawing and pointing his personal handgun at 2 young men, community members who were parked in front of his home for a neighborhood barbecue. He was placed on administrative leave, but he's clearly gotten his job back. As you know, he's serving as an SCS, a senior executive service for the Department of the Navy. Carnegie is also one of the Navy signatories for the administrative consent order, and in our humble opinion, has been one of the more confrontational and less sympathetic members that we've had to work with. Again, a lot of you all shared your concerns. Many of you have shared why on earth would the Navy, you know, send a man who has this history of gun violence to a community of traumatized and outraged parents of poisoned children. That gun violence has been a very sensitive subject on the island for many years, and it hits very close to home to many of you, even within our own community. As a result, we raised these concerns with the EPA. At least 3 of our members went directly to Amy Miller. We came to her as a group. Amy was in a tough position, right? Because she couldn't even go to the Navy. The Navy was refusing to even respond to her based off of some of her answers to community members last meeting. And so she was in a sticky position and took the position that it wasn't her job to really mitigate that situation and deferred us to the Navy. Well, as you've heard tonight, we have reached out to the Navy multiple times. I even directly contacted the Undersecretary or Secretary Meredith Berger. Obviously, no response there. So with that being said, we as a CRI have made the unanimous and unilateral decision, much like the one that's been made here tonight, obviously with all the empty seats, that while Carnegie may be the signatory for the Navy when it comes to defueling He will no longer be welcome to engage or attend our public CRI meetings. And this is to ensure the safety and the mental health of our community who have been traumatized by this crisis and who have been triggered by being forced to work with a man who has a history of pulling his weapon during heated conversations. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Marty.
Any other comment from the CRI members?
Have we posted the video on our website? The story? At some point, that'd be good.
Okay, so
We
you
can
want
make
to post
sure.
the CBS News story on the, understood. Okay, yeah. We could put that. Yes, it's not on there now, but we'll get it up before the night is out. Thank you. All right, so I would like to suggest that we, oh, sorry, Elima, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
Mahalo for introducing this item on the agenda, Mandy, and for going through the explanations. The public can view the videos and judge for themselves the demeanor of the individual. I myself, because I have lost a child to gun violence and because it was under unusual domestic violence circumstances, I myself felt very uncomfortable when I found out that Mr. Carnig was in fact, an individual who could not compose himself and felt he needed to use a firearm to get his point across to teenagers. So I am one of the individuals who did actually make a complaint with Amy Miller, and I have never received any sort of response. I cannot, in good conscience, advocate for the prevention of gun violence in Hawaii, in the United States, if we're sitting across the table from someone who is willing to pull out their firearm in a dispute with, again, teenagers. So I really do appreciate everyone's patience in this regard. I apologize if it's slowed the role of the federal government, but I think that it's appropriate for us to take a look at the demeanor of the individuals who are the signatories and whether or not they can be trusted and to operate in good faith. So mahalo for allowing me to share my mana'o. Mahalo.
Thank you, Lima. Anything else? Okay, sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, that is one area of concern, especially when we leave these meetings and it's dark at night and the parking structure is not well lit at some areas. So that is a concern. But over and above the risk of harm that we might, or fear of that we might feel, is there's also the efficiency of Carnig, because he has been the one that has answered a lot of the questions that we have posed. However, the way he answered those questions have been highly insufficient. He would tell us, if we ask a question, he would say that we would have to file a FOIA request. And many of our questions that were asked were responded in that manner. You have to file a FOIA request. And so that really undermines our transparency, or the transparency that they promised to us, because often what would happen is when you submit a FOIA request, that request still has to be cleared by the Navy. And Carnig is representing the Navy. So it's kind of like a tautology where it just goes around in circles, and then the end result is that you don't get an answer at all. And if that's the case, then of course that undermines our job as representing the community and having them rebuild trust with us so that we can trust what they tell us, but they appear to be just suppressing the information as if what we are asking are not what they want to tell us. And I think that's why they're not here today. Thank you.
Okay, so CRI members, do you want to take any other action in regards to Carnig? I'm not exactly sure what we could do. We could write a letter to Secretary Berger, more formal than an email. I don't know if that would make a significant difference. What do we do if he's the representative at the February meeting?
So, okay, I will make a motion.
I'll second.
You can't do that. That's not allowed.
I will make a motion that Marty, you write a letter. I'll have it.
Thanks.
To, I guess it's to Berger,
Okay.
saying that the CRI is uncomfortable meeting, any face-to-face meeting, certainly, with Carney. And that we're asking her to have, I guess, Robert Thompson, that's his name, right, Robert?
He has come to other meetings,
Attends
yes.
all the meetings rather than Carney's.
Okay, all right. Okay, we will get on that.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. All in favor? Yay, all right, we're ready. Congratulations. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next agenda item, relevant state legislation.
Oops. I don't have a bill number yet, but I wanted people to know for informational purposes. I know there's been a lot of frustration that people have had regarding the inability or refusal to have the Navy clean up all the drinking water so that there's no jet fuel and no element of jet fuel in the water. To that end, there is a bill that is about to be introduced in the legislature that would amend the underground storage tank law to require that all jet fuel be cleaned up from any leak of underground storage tanks. Basically, we've thrown around the term EAL or environmental action level. That's irrelevant. I mean, the EAL effectively would be zero. That would be the cleanup standard that the Department of Health would require of the Navy. So if the bill were adopted, thank you.
Along those lines, the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party will be introducing several bills, and one of them involves the EALs, which is the Environmental Action Level. And basically, it is calling for the Department of Health, whenever there is a event in which they intend to move, whether increasing or decreasing the level of EALs, that would necessitate a public hearing. And they would also have to justify the movement of the EALs, and it has to be health risk related as well as backed by scientific evidence. So that's one of the bills. Another bill would be regarding water testing. We are requesting that water as well as biological samples such as fish be tested for the amount of PFAS the water has, as well as what the fish, as we all know, we're culturally drawn to eating fresh fish, poke and reef fish. And the closer you are to shore, the more susceptible the fish is in having PFAS bioaccumulate in its body. And so when we consume it, then we are effectually consuming PFAS into our body as well. So this bill would call for the testing by the state of all waterways as well as biological samples. Now, please note, this would be the first such bill in the nation, should it pass. Okay, and then we're also calling for a PFAS working group so that this group will be able to determine what the causes or what brings in the PFAS and ways that we could eliminate the PFAS from the state. And finally, well, it's not finally, one more after this, EPA certified lab, a bill that would allow funding, because the bill did pass. However, that bill called for federal funding. And so now we are going to rely on hopefully general funds from the state and have a EPA certified lab in the state so that samples need not go for verification in California, which has oftentimes had a turnaround time of 2 weeks to 30 days. And then this is the final one, would be testing the wastewater. Schofield Barracks, for example, takes in wastewater from 5 installations on Oahu. And that wastewater is then treated and then reused for irrigation, and the sludge is also reused for fertilizer. Now, absent any testing for PFAS, which is the case it is now, that will cause the PFAS to go from the water into the groundwater, into the soil, into the plants, into the produce, into our bodies. So this bill will call for testing of those that are running the wastewater treatment facility. There, it's going to be their kuleana to make sure that that water that they are selling for irrigation and fertilizer is free of contaminants as well as PFAS. Thank you.
CRI members, any questions regarding relevant legislation or any other legislation you want to raise? This is related to the fact that legislative session just began yesterday. So anything else?
I have flyers too.
Okay, great, thanks.
It's interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick time check and try to manage our agenda. So we have made it through the new business that we set out when we made this agenda on Wednesday. We did find out today about a new survey that was just released that we do want to make sure we have time to share. So that's something that I would like to add to the agenda. In addition, we have several old business items. And it is basically 6 o'clock. Ideally, I would like to end the meeting at 7 if we can. And so to give the public sufficient time for their questions and the dialogue there, I'm thinking we need to start public comment by 6:30. So I'm just looking at CRI members. How do you guys feel about, is there anything that we want to say about the old business items? This is the updates that we were expecting from the Navy that we aren't going to get. Okay, you have stuff? Okay. And as well as updates from the EPA. So Lacey, so let's do the old business items as quickly as we can. And then we'll circle back up to a new item from Tara, the update on the survey of affected families that just came out today. And then we can move to public comment, hopefully around 6:30. Does that sound good?
I am okay with doing the survey information after public comments so that is, it seems to make sense to have that after all of the business. And then if people want to stay, in case that goes after the 7 o'clock mark, then they have that freedom without having to wait to make their public comments on the business items, if that's okay.
Everybody's shrugging. Let's see where we are on time. How about that?
But I just give that.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go to old business then. We'll start with updates from the Navy. Just for people who can't see the agenda, we talked about the transition. I tried to come up with new terminology because people are getting confused about which task force is which. All of them are Red Hill Task Force. What just completed was the gravity defueling. So basically the easy part, they made the repairs that they were supposed to have been making all along and then turned open the spigots and caught the fuel in the ships that below. And now they're moving to the more complicated process, which is a more to remove the fuel that cannot be moved by gravity and to get all the fuel and contaminants or nooks and crannies. They were also supposed to give us a premise plumbing update. These are for the homes that are people are reporting ongoing symptoms. They were supposed to give us a remediation plan. There was also going to be a discussion about the 180 questions outstanding with the Navy. And then we also wanted to renew our request for a site visit to the Red Hill fuel tanks. All right, I got David and I got Lacey. Go for it.
Okay, my comments on the premise plumbing update from the Navy. As was previously mentioned, we were waiting and promised that update at this meeting, and that is very important. They're not here, so we didn't get it. However, I did log in to the last minute town hall the Navy gave yesterday on Facebook, and they said they were essentially done with their investigation, which is news to us and also not good enough because they're saying they're done. They don't know where the source of contamination is. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. You can't say, yeah, we recognize there's petroleum hydrocarbons in your water, but we don't know what the source is. Okay, well, if you don't know, we where is it coming from? Why is it there? You got to figure it out. You can't say you're essentially done with the investigation. And it's not good enough for the families living on the water lines. You have to do something. You can't just say, okay, it's there. We're done. People are having health effects, but we're not going to take in that information, make any changes, or take any action to help these people. We're just essentially done.
I just want to emphasize on the defueling aspect that the governor put out sent out an email to his supporters stating falsely that defueling had been completed using the Navy's new definition of defueling. There's more fuel in those tanks and pipelines now than contaminated our water 2 years ago. So there's still a great threat. Obviously, we are all pleased that 100 million gallons or more than that of fuel have been removed, but that does not mean the threat has gone away.
Any other comments, Mandy, Ilima? Okay, just checking. All right. Updates from the EPA. We were expecting to get a presentation to get more information, what is known in the business as a back brief on their investigation of that found that there is total hydrocarbons in the water that people are consuming on base. So we're looking forward to that information. We also wanted to get a better understanding of the scope of the contamination. It's come to our attention that there are more communities, civilian communities on the Navy water lines than previously understood. And so we are looking forward to the EPA helping us to identify the extent to which civilians, people not living on base, are receiving water from the Navy water lines and at risk of contamination. Any commentary on that?
Wasn't something more specific about that?
Is there something more specific about that? Oh, right. I don't know if Jamie Simic, if you are interested and available in saying something. Thank you for the reminder.
So I have reached out with Amy Miller, the Board of Water Supply.
Jamie, introduce yourself so people know who you are.
Hi, sorry. Jamie Simic also was involved in the interim CRI. I have had communications even today with the EPA. They have confirmed that Manana Housing is on the Board of Water or on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor's water line. They were switched back over in March of 2022. So any families that are living in Manana or experiencing any effects, sorry, my heart, sorry. Anybody experiencing any effects do need a report to the EOC. If they are not getting a response or getting the finger pointing, they need to reach out to the EPA. They can also reach out to myself and I will get them in touch with other families or the CRI. I know everybody has connections with the EPA. I do have a recent email that I just got about 4 days ago, and then another one today confirming Manana is back on the water line. They say that Amy says that Manana is the only one off the list, but they are still looking into other communities that have reported to me as well, such as Moana Loa Terrace apartments right by Red Hill that are suffering complaints. So they're digging into those locations and a few others that have reported, but nothing has been confirmed yet. I am sorry, my heart's acting up right now.
Jamie, I think one thing you forgot to mention is that these people who are living in these communities that you just mentioned, they have people who were having health symptoms, called into the EOC, and they were told by the EOC that they were not on the water lines.
Yes, they were told that it
How
was
can
for
the
the water
EOC not
supply.
know who is on the water lines? And if they don't
Exactly.
know, they need to assume that they are and make the recording and take appropriate action. Instead, they're being dismissed and discouraged from reporting at all and just essentially being hung up on and say, have a good day, you're fine.
Exactly. And that's been going on for quite some time. And I did have a conversation with Amy about that, as well as Dr. O, because there is multiple families that are being affected. One with 2 young children that were the same age as my children when we lived in Manana, and they were taken to Tripler with gastrointestinal burns, and I'm sorry, not Tripler. They were taken out to a local hospital, and they were unfortunately not given very much direction. They said there is no testing for jet fuel. Even when I was in Tripler, I was told that 72 hours, they keep saying 24 hours. I have it on recording by the deputy director admitting that if I would have came in within 72 hours of being exposed, they could have tested me, which I was. So that there's a lot of miscommunication going out that we need to get into the community and get this rectified.
Thank you, Jamie. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thanks.
So still quite a lot of heavy things we need to continue to work on. Any other conversation? Yeah, go ahead.
Marty, if I may, I think this is a good segue to things that we were going to talk about, but I think we should just mention and then put a pin in it and have it as an action item for next meeting. But I think community concerns that we are getting, and I think potentially some of them are there today to speak about the NDA that residents are being forced to sign. That is one related to housing. The other one that is near and dear to my heart, I know many of the impacted families, Tara and Lacey and myself, is the leases, right? And so we firmly believe that every new resident should be briefed thoroughly on the Red Hill water crisis and the status of the water now, not just that it meets safe drinking water standards, as Lacey pointed out, a number that was made up not based on public health assessment or any public health information in mind, but everyone should be given the opportunity to make an informed decision if they want their children to be bathed or if they want to fill up their baby bottles with water that still has TPH, no matter the level, lingering in their water system. And so the only way that that is possible is for this information, a thorough brief, not just something that you skim or something that is pointed out and it is formally briefed to every new resident, as well as an addendum to current leases and a flyer or some sort of informational paper that goes out to all of the civilian businesses off base, to include, Capelina Beach Homes, to include Mauna Lua Terrace, Restaurant 604, the Pearl Harbor Historic, Visitor Center, things like that. So I think those are two things that are sort of tied to housing that we definitely need to talk about. And I'm hoping that some of those residents, specifically with the NDAs, are there to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy, we will, and one comment also mentioned the schools. Yeah, that should also be on the list. Okay, so we'll include that for the February meeting.
Just briefly, I do want to mention there are schools on the water line, and I happen to know I see there's some teachers in the chat, and I know they're concerned for their students. And I have my own children who are at public schools. I don't let them refill their water at school, and I know that's the case for many people. So we'd rather our kids go all day without drinking water than fill it up on the water fountain. So I would like to talk to that next meeting.
All right, it's on the agenda. Walter, go ahead.
I did want to make a comment for members of the public. We were talking about EALs, their environmental action levels. Those are levels of exposures of the petroleum products that were calculated based on a number of different factors, body weight, the duration of exposure, and that kind of stuff. So the level that was calculated out by the state was 266 parts per billion. And that's the criteria that is being used by the Navy and EPA and the Department of Health to say if your water is less than 260 or has less than 266 parts per billion, the petroleum hydrocarbons, then it's safe to drink. And so that's the criteria everybody is using. The comments you're hearing from everybody right now is that for those people who are drinking that water, the Navy sampling data, there's 6,000 something water samples, are showing levels of petroleum hydrocarbons in the water in the range of 50 to 70 parts per billion. And that's in the EPA letter or the EPA investigation as well. So what that means is you're drinking water that has petroleum hydrocarbons in it. Is that a safe level? We have no idea what the safe level is. In other words, what level can you drink where we would expect to see some health effects, or if it's a low enough level where we would not see any health effects? So we're gambling and we're not really sure. Everybody's concern that keeps coming up is that one fact. We can't justify this environmental action level. So the litigation and all the things we need to do is important. We need to get our arms around it and stop telling people that it's safe when we really don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no other conversation about the updates we were expecting or hoping for from the EPA, it is only 6:07, so I think we do have time to go over the survey results that were just released today, if everyone's supportive of that idea, and then we can move to public comment at 6:30. You have something?
Covers the site visit.
I mean, we wanted to renew our request for site visit. I mean, I don't know if there's anything more to say about that.
Well, there was also the problem that we should. Thank you. Okay, while the October meeting, our first meeting, Rear Admiral Wade did indicate that they would not allow us a site visit of Red Hill at that time. And he did say that a video visit, albeit not the same thing, would be something that he would be willing to share with us. And to date, we have not had the opportunity to have a video visit, a virtual visit, or an actual site visit. So we are now renewing our request for an actual site visit because of the defueling at the stage that it is at. And I do want the community to be made aware that a lot of the transition from the gravity pull to now the residual fuel removal was something that we did not address at the last meeting in December 13th, because it was anticipated that we would be talking to them tonight. And since they've started the residual fuel defueling part this week, we are definitely at a disadvantage not being able to question their plans and how they are doing that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else about old business, updates from the Navy, updates from EPA? Okay, handing it over to Tara. You ready? Okay. Okay, I think we'll stay here, and then Rosalie and I will telepathically work together. We'll text each other. Yeah. Okay. Again, my name is Tara Sutton. I think previously I might have barely, slightly misspoke. I am an assistant researcher, research assistant. I'm a student, all of those things. I'm working towards my master's degree in the Department of Geography and Environment at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I have a bachelor's, a triple bachelor's in ethnic studies, anthropology, and communicology that I just graduated in May of 2023. So hopefully my next
all University of Hawaii at Manoa. I'm powering through and my PhD will be next. So thank you, Hawaii, for having me. I appreciate my time here. The research that I am going to be presenting on is because I drink the water. I was going in one direction, and halfway through my bachelor's degree, I took everything that I learned and I focused in on this. And this is my life now, and it will be for the foreseeable future in some capacity, one way or another. So I wear a lot of hats in my life, and it's rare that I let the hats intermingle in my closet. When I act in one capacity, I am strict to stick to that lane. And then when I act in another capacity, I'm strict to stick in that lane. And tonight I'm wearing two hats because tonight I'm a community member and I'm a researcher. And it's rare that I talk about both in one setting. And so I will talk about my research. And at some point, I will probably share some opinions, but it's rare that I do both. But I'm also here as a part of this team, and as a CRI member representing the community. I have opinions and I have feelings because I drink the water. So if my voice shakes, it's because I'm feeling something. And normally when I share about my research, I try to keep that in a little bucket. And when I get home, I hug my husband and I open that bucket and I have my feelings and they're separate. But I'm wearing two hats today. And so the colors are going to blur. Okay, so just bear with me. So if we could go to share screen so that people don't see all my squiggly notes at the bottom. The slideshow button is up on the right next to. Does it get funky? Okay, well then just don't read my notes because that's my brain being funky. All right, so I know that we all know what we're doing, but in the middle of walking through the forest, sometimes we forget how big those darn trees are. And I also know that given the complexity and the politicalness of the last couple of days and the frenzy in the media, this might be having a little bit more traction. So I kind of want to ground us a little bit and bring us back. So welcome home, Oahu. Here we are. This is our island. This is our home. This is our beloved Aina. And we're going to talk about our whai, okay? Now, I wish can I go over there? I don't know if this will work. Okay, I'll point. Can we go up one? Can you use your mouse to show us where Pearl Harbor is? And then just cut across to like where MCBH is.
Like over the mountain.
Like go over the mountain. No, not that direction. Like where the.
Here, Dana.
Thank you. Kaneohe. Yeah. So like if you were to just kind of like stand in Pearl Harbor and look across at Kaneohe.
And then the Marine Corps bases.
Yeah. Now go to the next slide. If you were standing in Pearl Harbor at the bottom of the slide and you were looking at Kaneohe, this is what we're looking at. Down in the bottom, you see Kapakaki Ridge, where the Red Hill fuel tanks are. Okay. This is our land, okay? Next slide. Here we are just a little bit closer. This is where the fuel tanks are. They're U.S. Navy's Red Hill fuel storage facility. Now we're looking at Red Hill. It's not Kapukaki, right? Next slide. All of these slides, you'll see a little QR code. That's where I took it. That's like my little citation, yeah? So we know there's 20 tanks. We know there's the aquifer. Like I won't drone us with the details we already are aware of, but like we've been staring at these trees and they're so big, but we forget, yeah? Like here's one tree and we know it's as big as the Aloha Tower, but how big is that? Next slide. It's 250 feet tall. How big is 200 feet tall? As soon as the site was declassified, as soon as the site was declassified in 1995, the Engineering Association, I forget the title exactly because I'm not looking at that and I didn't write it in my notes, but they recognized Red Hill as an amazing feat of human accomplishment. humans did something that they had never done before in a very quick amount of time, and that was acknowledged by the Engineering Association. And they made it along with several other engineering locations as a historic landmark. So if we look at these vertical tubes of underground storage facilities, which had never been done before, how big are these? And go down one slide. It's almost as big as one tank is almost as big as the Statue of Liberty. And there's 100 feet above our aquifer. And the oldest leak in the Navy's records is from 1947 in their redacted paperwork that I can see. And when you look through all of their paperwork, you can't tell how much oil has leaked because some of their own paperwork that records this says that we can see there was a leak because of the staining underneath the storage tank. There's no citation for how many gallons were spilled, and they don't even know when it was spilled. There's just staining. There's no official record of how many gallons have been spilled over our aquifer, dating as far back as 1947. I just want to put it in perspective for everybody who is watching. Next slide. So after the November 2021 fuel spill, the response was for the Hawaii Department of Health and the Center for Disease Control, ATSDR, conducted 2 studies. First in the January, February of 2022. I don't need to look up there. I have it all printed in front of me. And that first study was, both of their studies were a convenience sample, and they had 2,289 water users do a convenient sample of water users, assess their immediate physical and mental health impacts. 86% of those respondents reported at least one or new worsening physical or mental health symptom since the spill. And then again in September of 2022, 986 respondents found that 80% continued to report symptoms. Those findings raised some serious concerns about the ongoing physical and mental health impacts, right? As well as various social and economic repercussions from the challenges to trust in institutions. So in response to this, the University of Hawaii at Manoa, along with UHERO, which is the university's economic research organization, the Water Resources Research Center, the Department of Geography and Environment, with support from the UH Water Resilience and Security, formerly known as the University Red Hill Task Force Team, and funding by the Hawaii Department of Health, conducted a survey in July of 2023 with Navy water users who had participated in the 2021 and 2022 surveys. So the participants of this survey were part of those first 2 surveys by the CDC and DOH. This survey is also part of the UHERO Rapid Health Survey, which gives us for the first time an ability to look at people exposed on the waterline as well as those who are unexposed. The preliminary results today don't show a comparison. That's going to come when we give a deeper analysis later this summer. The recruitment for our study was conducted in partnership with the CDC ATSDR. What they did is they worked with their previous participants and asked if people wanted to participate in a third study conducted by the University of Hawaii. And we received 174 people wanting to complete the survey. Those people were primarily active duty service members from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. We also had Department of Defense employees, dependent family members, retirees, and people who are not at all affiliated with the military. We would like to do a longer and more intensive recruitment strategy, which will allow for a larger survey respondent group. But this survey does provide a glimpse into the experiences of water users still 2 years after the event. In this blog post, we have provided a high-level preliminary result focused on self-reported ongoing physical and mental health symptoms, overall impact of the household, and levels of trust in institutions. Okay, so for the exposure zones, what I've done is I took the map that the Navy uses on their self-water site, and I corresponded with our respondents. I mapped it all out by zone based on where respondents said they lived in neighborhood names. So in the predominantly people lived in the Hickam area, but we have people living in unidentified zones: Pearl City, Pearl Harbor, McGrew Point, Ford Island, Red Hill, Capelina, north of the airport in the F1, F2. And then we also have people in AMR.
Where's AMR?
AMR is like the H3, H1, H3. Yep. So a really broad sample, but predominantly down in the D2, quite a bit there. Next slide, first graph. Here, 79% of respondents said that they experienced a new or worsening physical or mental health symptom. The majority, which was 87% of those, are ongoing, meaning that the respondents continue to experience health impacts from the event 2 years later. Mental health and neurological symptoms were the most widely reported. Nearly half of the respondents reporting ongoing symptoms. Notably, 92% of respondents reported shifting to an alternate water source after hearing about the incident, and 84% of water users who still live in the area continue to use an alternate water source or filtered water. Next slide. Can I finish and then come? Please rate the following. This question was about how impacted you feel your household was by the fuel spill. So when asked about the perceived effects of the fuel spill on the household, mental health issues were perceived as having the greatest impact. So 81% of people said that that was the greatest impact on their house. 73% of respondents said physical health. 66 talked about recreation, leisure, and financial impacts. Of those people reporting financial impacts, any kind of financial impacts, 40% continue today. Those financial impacts have not ended 2 years later. Institutional trust is something that I particularly have taken a great interest in. And I want to say that although trust is extensively investigated across disciplines, its dynamics within military institutions during environmental crises are notably underexplored, particularly in light of the distinct power structures and accountability challenges that characterize these settings. Responses from military community members, many of whom have lifelong associations with the military, reveal a deep sense of betrayal. The military serving as their employer, healthcare provider, housing authority, and community facilitator was expected to, quote, have their back. Therefore, trust was fundamentally shaken by the Red Hill water crisis. Literature on institutional trust emphasizes its importance in context, or literature on institutional trust emphasizes its importance in contexts where a single entity, such as the military, exerts comprehensive control over individual lives, underscoring the profound implications when such trust is compromised. The next two questions that we published about today are, first, how satisfied are you with the response of the following institutions to the November 2021 fuel spill? I'm going to let you just look at those responses and then I'll talk about them. Satisfaction with institutional response to the crisis varied substantially, but by far the highest satisfaction was with the Honolulu Board of Water Supply, which had statistically significant higher levels of satisfaction than all the other institutions, except for the Hawaii Department of Health. Satisfaction rates were significantly lower for the Navy and the U.S. military, non-Navy. The centers for the CDC and the EPA ranked in the middle. And now when I say statistically significant, I'm speaking with the calculations done, scientifically. We're not just arbitrarily saying, oh, that's significant. Finally, how much confidence, we asked our participants, how much confidence do you have in the following groups to act in the public's best interest? We didn't ask about the Navy, we asked about the US military as a whole, the federal government, journalists, religious leaders, the EPA, CDC, Hawaii Department of Health, medical doctors, scientists, and the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. These results mirror reported levels of trust or confidence in various groups, with the highest levels of confidence expressed in the Board of Water Supply. Respondents reported similar levels of confidence in scientists, medical doctors, and the Hawaii Department of Health. The US military and federal government received the lowest rankings. This, for me, in light of today and the last couple of days, is really something that I would challenge every institution who is charged with responding to the crisis to date, that you are still responding to this crisis. The EPA, the Department of Health, the Board of Water Supply, you are all still seen as responding. The Navy, the military, you are all still responding. And when our community has been asked, how confident are you that this organization, this institution is going to act in the community's best interest? I love all of the journalists in this room, but when a journalist is trusted to act in the community's best interest more than the military who is charged to protect me in the time of war, I think the Navy has some trust rebuilding to do. And I've been told that everybody was asked by the CRI when this was first formed to please take a trauma-informed course. That is so critical. And that was one of the very first things I did when I approached this research project. I am one of the community who was impacted by Red Hill, and I knew that wasn't enough for me to approach my own community to do research. I knew I needed to take a trauma-informed approach to approach my own traumatized cohort. The EPA, I've been told, has taken some training on that, and it shows the community trusts the EPA at a scientifically, statistically significant level. They are more comfortable that the EPA will act in the community's best interest more than the military will. I'm sad that the EPA is not here tonight. I'm sad that the military is not here tonight, but please at least take some trauma-informed approaches. Because when we say approach determines response, what happens at this table is a response. The approach was the poisoning and the response to the crisis. The next slide has QR codes, and if there's questions, Lacey, you have a question?
Quick comment that anger is a very normal response to situations like this, and it's useful.
I have something to say.
Okay, and then Susan in the room had a question. She stepped out.
I just want to say thank you to Tara. I would like to highlight how extremely important this is. I want to take the opportunity to say that this This is what transparency looks like. I'd like to highlight that the CDC and HESDR, they did these surveys years ago, right? They never came and gave us a formal back brief. We had the CDC director on our island at UH, no less, and while all this stuff was going on, and she never addressed Red Hill. She never met with a Red Hill impacted family. She met with all the politicians. DOH has not come to any of our meetings. Folks who are in charge of our health. And most importantly, about 7 months ago, we had, all of these epidemiologists flown in, snuck into the island to look through all of our medical records. And we waited 7 months to get a back brief on that. We got one, what was it, last week or something, from the DHA. And it was a one slider telling us that 55 to 65% of people are still experiencing symptoms or having new or ongoing symptom after exposure. One slide. This information just came out today, and Tara worked her behind off to come here and present it to all of you because that's how much she cares. All I heard from the DHA's brief, the other federal agency in this, is how much they were begging us to participate in their registry, right? That's not set up yet, that who knows if it's been funded or when it's going to start. They're begging for volunteers. I submit to all of you, and I encourage all of you, that when it comes to volunteering for something, when Tara and this group gets the funding for the next survey, this is a survey that this community needs to participate in, because this is a level of transparency that you will get. Thank you again, Tara.
I mentioned earlier about the environmental action levels and how it was calculated. That is called a risk-based assessment. What is normally supposed to happen is you do these calculations because you don't have any health-related data. So this survey helps to at least bring attention to the fact that there is health effects and there is a serious response in terms of human health. So when we look at our environmental action level, whatever number we calculated, we need to take into account this kind of a survey, because there's no other information with regard to poisoning a large group of people with fuel oil. So at the very least, we have something to start with, but it has to be taken into consideration. And up to this point, we're just looking at numbers we calculate. So thank you, Tara.
Right, unless there's any other comments on the specific survey, I think we should open up for public comment now. Anything else? We're good to go? Okay, if anyone's interested in offering public comment, either in person or on Zoom, raise your hand. For the purposes of Zoom, it would be great if the public commenters could come up and either sit in this chair or stand in that area, because that'll be picked up by the camera that is somewhere behind me. And if there's anybody online who wants to offer public comment, questions, concerns, anything. There's one on Zoom. I don't see their name, but okay.
Meredith Wilson on Zoom.
Yeah. One moment, please, while we find her image and project it for everybody to see. Oh, her video is not on. Oh, there she is. Okay. Are you ready, Meredith? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, please
Okay,
introduce yourself.
awesome. I had substantial things to say, and I just want to applaud you guys for being there. Even though no one's facing you, we're still here with you. We're in different states and we're with you. It may feel like we're talking in a silo sometimes, but I think that even just talking amongst each other, we're gaining strength. So thank you again for just being, like they say in the SAT, just signing your name is getting points. So you guys get points, and some other people did not tonight. But I'll quickly say some of the things that I was going to discuss. And if the Navy or the EPA wants to get back to me or to you guys about it, that would be fantastic. Let's start rebuilding that trust. First of all, this is not the first time that the Navy has declined to come to a meeting. Apparently they did not come to they declined to attend the September 2023 Red Hill Roundtable. And so that's just not very satisfying if they can't even show up to those kinds of things. But then again, here we are. Second thing, like Mandy said, where is the Department of Health? You know, the long-term monitoring plan was really based off of them first, because they created the EALs that we are doing all the testing on. The fact that they are not here, I'm still confused about how they're not a part of the 2023 AOC because they were part of the 2015 one. I still need clarification on how their role is. They decided they didn't want to be a signatory in 2023 because they are still so very important to, you know, calling our water safe and not. So I'm really confused about that, and I would like an explanation from the EPA about that. I did make a spreadsheet because that's what we do when we have all this on our minds and we can't get over it. Of the TPH detections from the last period 6 in the long-term monitoring, because we constantly have been told we don't have any detections of JP5. Okay, great. Well, then what is it? Out of the 1,500 plus 1,582 tests that were taken in the last period, which was July through December, there were 986 detections of TPH. That's total. By the way, you cannot find TPH on the Safe Waters website. You can only find the components. So in diesel, gas, and the oil ranges, you have to calculate it yourself or look at the raw data like I did and make a spreadsheet. No one should have to do that. If they want to be transparent, please add TPH as a filter on your interactive map, Navy. I request that highly, because if you think about the 986 detections, that's 61% of the samples. 61% of the samples they took in the last period had petroleum hydrocarbons. So what is it? If it's not JP5, is it a solvent? Is it ethylene glycol? Figure it out. It's not safe. My last thing is that I didn't realize that there was an Office of Inspector General report done by the EPA or via the EPA, signed in April 25th of last year. It stated that the subject matter experts that were required to work with the Navy as a part of the AOC did not do that because they were required to sign NDAs. I would like to know from the Navy, are you going to allow BWS, the Commission on Water Resource Management, and the USGS to work with you without an NDA? Because that is absurd. How can you work with these entities that have valuable perspectives and say that, oh, it's because of national defense? That's literally what their paragraph on the NDA says, because it's a national defense issue. And just like Ernie Lau said today in an HPR article, he said, Red Hill is closing. It's not in use anymore. Why is it a national defense problem or an issue? Or is that, why is that the reasoning? So unredact all the documents, help us out. This is the only way we can move forward. So Navy, I ask you again, if you'll listen, will you drop the NDAs so that we can all work together? The BWS has some idea about the geology. The DOH wrote a letter in November of 2023 saying that the Navy's flow optimization model had serious problems with their analysis. Maybe USGS can help with that. I appreciate it, and I know no one's going to answer, but I just wanted to applaud you guys again for being here. We're still with you.
Meredith, two different things. I think I saw maybe a text or email forwarded from you today. Can you send to somebody who can send to the rest of us your spreadsheet where you had the calculation of the 61%? Or maybe you already did, but I would like to see that.
We have it.
Okay, if you could send it to me, man, or we should put it on our website, that'd be great. And then I think, Meredith, you asked why the Department of Health was not a signatory to this, and I want to see if I can answer this for you. So you may recall after the spill in November, what was it, 2021, Department of Health issued an order. The EPA did not. It was the Department of Health. And initially the Navy challenged that order, and then the Navy backed down. So
After they got their butt kicked in a really, really great contested case hearing.
right. So the Department of Health did, from its perspective, all that it needed to do. And then EPA sort of came on later and decided it wanted to issue its own order. Its order pretty much duplicates what the Department of Health already required. I think the only substantive difference is the creation of the CRI. So there's some other little things, but so the Department of Health didn't feel it needed to participate in their administrative order of consent because they already have their own. It's an emergency order. They don't need the Navy's consent. They issued an order. The Navy challenged it. They lost their challenge and they withdrew it. So they have an effective order. The law backs them up. Whereas the EPA kind of is in a less strong position and therefore had to negotiate an agreement with the Navy. Anyway, that's sort of some context for you. And from our perspective, yeah, it's unfortunate the Department of Health is not participating. And I think part of it as well, not only are they not a signatory, but they just do not have the staffing to participate. So just I'm not trying to justify the Department of Health's action. I'm just trying to explain what their thinking is, and you can,
I'd just like to add to that. I think from my perspective, having tried to engage with EPA and the Department of Health under the 2015 enforcement order against the previous leak, it really felt like for the Department of Health to be a signatory to the enforcement action actually tied the state's hands, right? So like one of the sections of that administrative order on consent actually had the governor and all of his agencies ceding the final word over to the federal government, which I just thought was that was a bad way to go, because the Department of Health, the state, the governor, has its own interest in protecting the interests of its residents, and so I think in retrospect, as much effort as the Department of Health put in to try to make the 2015 AOC strong, it was really hard to get it enforced and implemented. There were a lot of deadlines that the Navy just blew, and the quality of the content that they produced was very low, and so I think the Department of Health taking this very assertive role and issuing an order, I think was a way to kind of like draw a line in the sand. And I don't know, but the point is well taken that they also are short-staffed, and so it's hard to actually get action and implementation. So yeah, but it's an excellent question. Thank you, Meredith, for your presentation.
And maybe add a legislative for funding for them if they need more help.
Yeah, every year. Never give up. Other comments from the public? Anybody? Yes, please. Yes, we'll use some mics.
Hi. Hello, I just have a question for CRI. Do we know when the PFAS will be taken out of the Red Hill? Since they moved over 104 million gallons of fuel, or distributed, so they don't need all of that PFAS. Someone mentioned 900 gallons, or is it 9,000 gallons of PFAS?
9,000.
It's 9,000 gallons, so they should actually work toward moving.
Yeah.
So will you be asking the Navy when they come back? Okay, thank you.
One of the challenges we had is that what is Wade, whatever Wade's name is, who's listening? Yeah, Admiral Wade. His only focus was defueling, and PFAS is not fuel. And so he didn't care about PFAS and wasn't willing to address the issue. And because he was in charge, and that that was his entire focus. He wasn't willing to do anything about it. Now that they're moving to this next phase, one would hope that that will become a priority, but they're not here to tell us.
There's also more than the 9,000 gallons. There's also it added 1 and added 6, 2 structures. And I think we're unclear. The 4,000 gallons are either contained in each or combined. So there's at least 13,000 gallons still up in Red Hill. And its purpose is to put out fuel fires. But you're right, now that the fuel, a substantial amount of the fuel is not there, the need is so much more decreased for that. But again, like Kimo said, that was not what Admiral Wade wanted. He did a unilateral decision not to move the PFAS. And his justification was to make sure that the fuel will be moved as soon as possible. And so the PFAS is inoperable. And I think that's the word he used, where it's just stored there. But insofar as when it will be removed, we have no indication. That would have been a really good question to ask them had they been seated before us now. Thank you.
In the December meeting, we asked that question. And I think it was General Lin and the Admiral that was sitting there both said that they couldn't move it because it's a requirement for whenever you're pumping fuel. So in October, Admiral Wade told us that he decided not to do anything about it. That system was inoperable. So this requirement that they were talking about, we asked them to provide us with the requirement, and I had asked them if they had submitted a waiver or a request for waiver so that they could get it out, at least from the Red Hill area. So the tank sitting up at 6 is just sitting there. And who knows if it's locked out properly or whatever, but they were supposed to get the requirement, find out if they could submit a variance or whatever and get back to us in this meeting, and they're not here. So that's, but we do need to keep the pressure on because that thing is just sitting there.
And any other questions about the PFAS? Yeah, and then we can move to Chris's question online. Okay, all right, go ahead, Chris.
Hello. Hi. Sorry, Chris Anton. I'm a affected family that lived in Capelina Beach Homes. So of course I follow all of this very closely as all our family has health effects, and we've participated in all of those questions or those surveys, anything that comes out from any of that, to just keep putting out there that yes, families continue to have problems. So and just to let you know kind of my background where I'm coming from. But my question is on CRI's role and with the emergency order, the way I understand the state's emergency order, it's to close the facility. It is it's a critical or imminent threat, not just the fuel. And I'm wondering if the narrative of where they're going with their closure plan on the Navy side, it appears, even though they wholly lost in their own survey of people on what do they want to do with the facility, nobody wants to reuse those tanks. Nobody. We want the facility closed. And the way I interpreted that state order is that it needs to close, period, not be reused. So is that going to be a pressure or a question from CRI to Navy about those, our concerns, from the community, that the Navy's going to do what they want? And I interpret their own way of what that means by closure, and they're going to just reuse the tanks anyway for whatever purpose. So I just have real major concerns about the second phase of going into closure for them, and if that's going to be addressed in any way during any of this.
Yes, we several of us on the CRI have raised this concern, especially because the way in which they conducted the survey about the reuse of the tanks, it really felt like they were trying to manufacture consent there, manufacture a sense of support for reusing the tanks. So if I remember correctly, in our first meeting in October, the CRI members are trying to, mark out some of the scope of the issues that we would be talking about, and the reuse of the tanks, and specifically not reusing the tanks, was brought up, and sort of along the same lines, Admiral Wade said, my focus is just on the gravity defueling, and so when we are done with that, in January, we can start, talking about these other questions and other issues. So it's definitely on our list of things that we are concerned about. Definitely. And if anybody else has any comments they want to make to that extent. No. Okay.
Yeah, is that part of
sorry.
CRI's role? I guess is also my second part of my question there was, what is CRI's role through the EPA creation? Is it going to be part of closure process or simply defuel and they'll cut off CRI's role? I'm a little confused or foggy about what that is.
Yeah, so our function is to address defueling, cleanup, closure, and safe drinking water. So, it may be possible that the Navy and EPA are meeting right now to renegotiate the terms of the AOC and try to carve out the CRI, which we will definitely have some strong opinions about. I think one thing they need to recognize is that they're going to have to deal with us, whether it's in the form of the CRI or as the public, because we're not going away. But at least the way the document is written now, they are supposed to include us, and we are part of the process in figuring out closure of the facility. David.
Yeah. And we've had a very full agenda. And so I think we all recognize that closure, we're not there. Like there are more urgent the things that are happening today that we need to talk about. And I think a lot of us recognize that the existing contamination in people's homes is probably the most important thing. It is. And at the same time, they were dealing with the immediate defueling. So the Navy wanted to talk about the immediate defueling. We wanted to talk about the contamination in the homes. And so closure is like at the bottom of people's lists, and reuse or non-reuse. So we'll get there, but we're not there yet.
Can I add just real quick? I know time is sensitive, but just real quick, I wanted to tell you thank you all. And I completely agree 100%. I think we've been screaming from the rooftops from the day we've had the fuel that our homes are not safe, and they have still not made them safe. And I do not care what those March and April 2022 stated. We have yet to be safe since spills of decades, but really in the imminent 2021 largest second spill, it's been horrible. So I appreciate all your work on all of that. So anything you can do to help that, I am all behind you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Honolulu has his hand up. We also saw a question from Wayne, and Elima has her hand up. Elima, are you responding to this conversation right now? Do you want to, or wait?
Yes, I am. I just wanted to thank Chris very much for helping us to remember that we do need to keep that in mind, and we need to keep pressure on our community leaders, including elected officials, that this eventually will be a closure. So thank you for reminding us of that, Chris. I really appreciate you, and I'm so sorry for anything that you've experienced. Mahalo for sharing your manao.
All right, you got a thumbs up from Mandy too. Okay, Honolulu, take it away.
I'll follow Wayne. He was first.
Hey, Wayne. Sorry to put you on the spot. Do you have a question?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I had to click the thing. Yeah, first just want to say like how deeply grateful I am, to the CRI, to Tara and Meredith and Mandy and all of the affected families and all of the other community members who've really made all the difference in the progress we've made. And in this fight for human decency, and for a home and for justice. And it's clear that its justice continues to be delayed. And just want to just, also express gratitude for the transparency of the CRI, your refusal to be gaslit and to be silenced. That just means the world, in so many ways. And also, I also want to stress that it's super important that what we are experiencing and what we've experienced is not forgotten, in the months and years and decades ahead. The Department of Health, they did emergency order. That was great, but we had to sue them. And by we, I mean Marty and Kimo. I had to sue them over the course of years, like 2, if not 3 times, depending on what it counts as a lawsuit. But before they did the emergency order, and that whole time, the community that was pleading for protection was being gaslit, was being lied to, dismissed. Our politicians were lied to, or were in the Navy's pocket. I don't know. But and now it sounds like the DOH and even now, even so close and within this crisis, we're seeing the Department of Health, we're seeing the governor's administration maybe starting to soften up again when it comes to holding the Navy accountable. Spreading misinformation. As Kimmel mentioned. So anytime we have an opportunity to build a record of what we've gone through, like with the Y report, like in our testimonies, in the studies that are being done, like we need to document that and make sure, the future versions of us are aware of the need to be, have a very critical perspective of what's will be going on, as we navigate this crisis. And then I just wanted to say, the bill that Kimo mentioned and the bills that Melody mentioned, we'll be tracking them. And so if you, just to help out, so if you folks would like, action alerts and notifications of, really key opportunities to engage and make sure these laws get passed, you can go to hawaiicapitalwatch.org, and I'll put that in the chat. And just put your email in, and then we'll send that information out as the session progresses. And it's going to be fast and furious. So, and all the all of the help and all the support we can muster is going to be again, it's going to be critical to making sure we institutionalize the things that need to be done in light of what's transpired. And that's all. And yeah, just thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wayne, for keeping the lights on. Okay, Honolulu, go ahead.
Aloha kako. Thank you folks for being here and for taking on this kuleana. And especially mahalo for folks who shared their personal experiences. It's a lot of komaha. It's a lot of weight and pain to carry, and hopefully there can be some catharsis with sharing it, as well as just helping to inform us and give us the context. Yeah. The fact that the Navy, the EPA, and the DLA are not present is huge, I think. And it can seem pretty bad, but I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's actually an opportunity because it's so blatant. It's so overt that I think this can be turned into an advantage for the CRI and for the public. And I'm curious to know if you guys have a media strategy for this. I think you have a lot of potential with their absence. I think to have more weight, and I think the media will be more interested in the CRI. It's a little friction, some rub, and that's what they love for TV, right? It's entertainment first, and I think we just got to be honest about it. This is something that was a lot of folks even getting into this thing knew this was a possibility of happening, a distinct possibility. So it's not surprising, but I think you can turn it to your advantage. And also, I'd like to speak to, I recently talked to Al, and I found out, and Melody also shared with me that the Hawaiian delegation of the CRI has resigned, and I think that's highly significant. And despite the fact that Helani and myself sometimes see things very differently. I think I can empathize with her and some of the reasons that may have not come out publicly, but that seem to be implicit in the resignation. And I know Al was pretty clear about his some of his concerns about how things are going, particularly with the isolation and the lack of transparency. So I think media, I really think the media potential now is greater than ever since you folks were conceived. And I think that even trying to get in some of the congressional delegation um, could be it could be a really good opportunity right now to get the Navy and the EPA back to the table. You know, and the EPA and the DOH, you know, they were smart. Thanks for speaking to that, Marty. You know, they didn't want to get involved in this new AOC because the first AOC was definitely not enough, and they obviously didn't, you know, didn't enforce it. And so the second AOC threatened to make it even more diluted. And then the DOH actually had spoke to that they don't want to be involved in this because it was a behind the door, you know, behind closed doors kind of action. And that's why, you know, folks came out so strong in the public meeting against what they were doing. And the CRI was basically what they were trying to give to the community to placate us. And I think part of it is a classic divide and conquer. This is what the American government does. They've had a lot of practice, you know. You know, it took them a while to get from the East Coast to the West Coast and then into the Pacific. And you know, they had a lot of practice by the time they got to Hawaii. They're very good at what they do. And divide and conquer is one of their key tactics. And and I think this is a way to flip it on its end. So um, I would love to help facilitate that any way I can. So I offer, you know, any time I can give to that. And again, I want to mahalo all of you. And I really appreciate you guys trying to bring it um, to the public in a more meaningful way. And I think there's things we can possibly do to even make it more accessible. And that's the way to get people back involved. Because a lot of people think it's a done deal. You know, I'm really happy that 104.6 million gallons have been defueled. I think that's something to, I don't want to say celebrate, but acknowledge. And it is a victory. But it's, of course, we know it's just one of the battles, the many battles. And I don't think the AOC really, really speaks to, in a concrete way, cleanup and remediation, which is the real deal. Because after they take out the rest of this residual fuel, we still have the legacy fuel spills. And, you know, I just recently found out the full extent of the Halava Gate spill, the 5 million gallon, possibly 5 million gallon, which is, you know, comparable to the Exxon Valdez spill in Alaska. And, you know, that's really scary to think that what's left after they defuel is just as scary as those 104 million gallons, you know. And I think it's something that we're really going to have to look at. And I think this is going to be the, you know, I'm glad. I think we do got to acknowledge the Navy. Hey, you guys defueling, that's great. But now they're getting into the part that pretty soon they're going to be doing the destructive phase of the residual fuel removal. You know, right now they're just opening valves because they started it this week, right, on the 15th. So they've been opening valves and other drains. And so they're still kind of using gravity, trying to use it to the best of their ability, not coming out of the main pipes. But we know that eventually they're going to get to where they can't get it out. And the only way, from what the Navy has told me, is they're going to start removing the pipes first. And then they're going to get into, they didn't want to give me any details about how they're going to get into the tank and get the sludge out, because I think that's going to be a little bit more sketchy. And I would just love to learn what that actually is. They're being very evasive on that. So anyway, I know you guys want to wrap this up by 7:04. I apologize for coming late. This is my first official CRI meeting that I'm attending. And I just want to say mahalo, because I think a lot of folks don't understand to what extent you folks are working on this and trying to bring it to the public. And I appreciate that. I have my differences on how we should approach this, And you know, I hope I have time to talk about some of that with you folks, some various tactics that we can consider. But I'm impressed that, you know, that's one of the criticisms you're getting from the government is because you're trying to make this more transparent. And that really makes me happy to hear that. You know, you're doing something right when they don't want to come. So so mahalo again, and I hope to see you soon at your next meeting. Possibly I'll be able to make, I'm usually working during the day, hard for me to make those 12 o'clocks, but I think I can hop in at least and listen in. So mahalo again, and thank you for folks of the community who commented too, some great testimony and questions. So mahalo.
Want to just respond to one thing that was raised, and it was raised in the previous meeting about the sludge at the bottom of the tanks. So when we had this contested case hearing, whatever, a couple of years ago, and it has been the practice of the Navy to completely defuel each tank. They were supposed to do it every 10 years. They fell behind schedule a lot. But I did go on a site visit, went into one of these tanks that had been drained. So they have historically pretty easily taken care of the sludge and gotten down to the bottom of the metal because they have to fix the metal. They're telling us, what I think it was 2 meetings ago, some person said it's going to take several years for them to get rid of the sludge, which doesn't make sense because they have done this in the past repeatedly for the various tanks. I think this stuff is gnarly, but I don't think removing it is gnarly because they've done it repeatedly. So I just want to let people know that.
Yeah, it's not an impossible task. I'd agree. I mean, if anything, there are those handful of tanks that haven't been cleaned in 40 years. So maybe the quantity of sludge is higher than they're normally used to dealing with. But it shouldn't take them years. They're dragging their feet. So yeah, we got to hold them accountable on that. And I just want to thank you, Humble, for your comments. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Could I just quickly comment to that? Thank you, Kimo, for that. I've been in Red Hill twice, and the one time I got to go in and out on the catwalk into one of those tanks, and it was pretty crazy. Or I guess both times there were two different tanks. But what I'm concerned about is they only have a few of those tanks. We haven't really seen that many. They're showing us the same couple of tanks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's two tanks that were taken offline way back. And they're just saying, oh, well, we didn't need them. And I'm just not buying that. You know what I mean? So I think they have a couple tanks that they've been showing to the politicians and the VIPs and whatnot. And so I'm concerned about that because that's what I was thinking too. They've already cleaned this. I've been in the tanks. I've seen it. It was well, I can't say it was clean on the bottom. Had all kind of marks. You remember that? It was amazing how much damage there was inside the tank and just how massive it was. 100 feet diameter, 200 feet, 50 feet high. And we come in at the 200-foot level, yeah, which is about where the 10 million gallon mark is. Because even though each tank has 12.5 million gallons of capacity, they had to scale it back to 10 million gallons. And I'm guessing because they were having problems filling those things all the way up. You know, I can imagine the weight of 10 million gallons. Can you imagine 12.5 million gallons? That's a lot. It's a lot of fuel. So I just think we don't really know. And I think, you know, we all were kind of surprised at March 7th, 2022, when Austin, you know, proclaimed that they were going to shut it down. This was on the heels of the Navy telling us pretty straight up, scoffing at our suggestion that they should ever shut down Red Hill. And I was laughed at by the Deputy Chief of Staff for Admiral Paparo, Captain John Miller. He was like, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. So what I think when Austin made that decision, I think Austin has some integrity. And I think he got to see some of the real data. And he's like, oh my God, we need to get out of this real quick. Kind of how the military was divesting itself of its wastewater treatment facilities in the early 2000s, you know, so, you know, particularly like Schofield wastewater management. you know, they know that they got to divest themselves from this stuff and try to get away from it. But anyway, thank you for that, Kimo. I am worried because I figured if it was something they did a lot, they'd be able to give us a quick protocol of what that looked like, and they haven't done that yet. Mahalo.
Can I just say one thing? I know we're trying to wrap this up, but a very wise congressional leader once told me that, and I'm not saying this from my own personal experience in the military, a very wise congressional leader once told me that the Navy will continue to overextend their timeline so that they can build in a time to celebrate a win. So it sounds like this stuff has been done before. And mark my words, today, it's the 19th of January at 12:10 a.m. that we will be celebrating a win about how they were ahead of schedule. When we know that they just need to get some buckets and shovels down there and clean this up, which they've done many times before. So I just wanted to go on the record and say that. One thing I'd like to highlight in closing is I would just encourage the community. We try to put it out on social media, and Wright does a wonderful job. But there are things every single day in the news, and I'm looking at you all out there in the crowd. We have not stopped talking about Red Hill. Today, a very important day for those who aren't tracking. We've got Representative Gallagher on the Hill right now sending a letter to the Secretary of the Navy, concerned because he sits on the Committee for China and is concerned about readiness, right, and our fuel supply in the Pacific. So those are the things that impact us. And those are things where we need to speak up and respond to, because delaying and completely defueling, I know we've said we're not going to use these tanks anymore for fuel, but if you've got Congress talking about readiness and China knocking on our back door, it's a concern, and it's a conversation that we need to continue having. And I would just encourage the community to stay up on current events, and Wright makes that very easy for us. And we all have our own media folks, but it's something that we as a CRI will talk about probably next week, and something that we'll want to talk about in response to. I actually met with Gallagher, Jamie Simic and I did, with our legal team about a year ago. He's tracking the human impact. He is in support of us shutting this down. However, just like the Navy hasn't been transparent with us, the community, they also have not been very transparent. Paparo and everyone else who's about to take the Indo-PACOM seat has given Congress the peace of mind to know what the plan is. So Congress is left in the dark just as much as we are right now. And I just encourage the community to keep up on those current events, and we will try to continue to talk about it here in this forum as well. Thank you. I know we're over time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the comments and perspectives. So thank you very much, Hamaloa and Mandy. Any other closing comments from CRI members? Anybody? Shaking hand. Anybody else from the public need to say anything? Last call. Oh yeah, take it away, Melody.
I think the hardest part is going to be the remediation and cleanup. And I think that's where we really need to focus on. And that's probably where they don't want to really disclose, because we've had 80 years of mismanagement, reckless disregard for the environment and human health. And here we are worried about the sludge. There's still sludge out there from before long, and there's still, the Halawa stream took a beating. It really did. It became the trash can for the Navy. And that's probably the basis for the contamination of Pearl Harbor. So unfortunately, and as Hanalo had mentioned, there's still 5 million gallon plume under there at the Makalapa Gate, I believe, right? Or the Halawa Gate. But it's just one plume underground in which the Navy's fully aware exists, and we don't see any intent of them cleaning it up. So it's not just what we can see Red Hill right now, it's what Red Hill represents for the last 80 years. And so hopefully all of that cleanup will be done. And I think that should be one of the main bases, that we are not to let them go.
Very good point, Melody. And I would just say, while we as a CRI are going to work as hard as we can on that Red Hill question, she's right. It is indicative of the military presence in Hawaii. And I really encourage people who are activated by this issue to engage in lease negotiations, because the military is going to want to solidify its foothold here. And I think for people who are concerned about public health and the environment, you should have a strong opinion about those leases. So thank you very much. Yeah, so I should thank the Office of Wine Affairs for providing a beautiful facility and all this high-tech stuff for us to use. Thank you very much. At no cost, the CRI has zero budget. And so we are all just pulling this together out of our love for our water and each other. And so thank you very much to the Office of Wine Affairs and to all of their staff after working really, really hard yesterday at the Onipa'a March and opening day. Thank you very much. And thank you all for, I want to acknowledge Madison and Rosalie, who are our super twins who are helping us get all the work done. Thank you very much from behind the scenes. And I would like to thank all of the CRI members. Thank you for sticking it through. And I look forward to meeting in February. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for February 15th. So mark your calendars and watch our website and social medias, and we will keep everyone posted on that. Thank you very much. Aloha.
We did it. So that's the next step.